Get ready for a no BS approach to health and fitness. This is NBS Fitness Radio.
All right, what's up? And we are back with NBS Fitness Radio. I'm here with Noah Glenn. Noah is how long have you been at NBS?
I've been training here for just over 3 years.
Okay, very cool. And then I think, how long have you been training people here as well? Because we brought you on staff last year? Or?
Yeah, just under a year, I think.
Okay.
Right under a year.
Very cool. And what kind of clients do you typically work with, focus on?
For the most part, people that are either directly interested in strongman or brand new to becoming into the strength sports, just want a basic introduction to the main lifts: overhead press, bench press, deadlift, squat, that kind of thing.
Very cool. Talk to me about kind of like your own training background, like how were you when you got started?
Okay, so I guess probably like a lot of people, I started with sports when I was younger, played tons of sports, lots of basketball. 1 year of baseball, even though I was terrible at it, I was forced to be the catcher because I was a fat kid. So I hated it, never played another year of baseball again. Really found my love for like strength training, I guess, in 8th grade, transitioning into high school football.
Okay.
So
who introduced you to it, or how'd you get introduced to it?
The team itself. So we had an actual strength training facility on there.
Like basketball team or?
Football team.
Football team,
Football
okay.
team, yeah.
And where'd you go to high school?
I went to FACS.
Okay, very cool. So y'all started working with 8th graders.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was like the transitional period right after 8th grade football. If you think you're going to play freshman year, all right, we need to get you in the weight room. Got to catch up like the gap in between the levels.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. So play football. Did you play anything else in high school?
No. I shot trap, but.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. I wish we had a trap team. Arlington has a pistol team, like
really?
Like
steel challenge?
A steel challenge team, which I'm like,
right
oh man, if I could have shot guns in high school, like instead of sweating my ass off in baseball, that'd been awesome. All right, so got into it in 8th grade, like a lot of guys do for football. Kind of fell in love with it. What'd you do after high school?
So, well, really, while I was in high school, I think my love for like specifically training on my own kind of came along during that time period, because I actually lost 100 pounds in between my junior year and maybe sophomore to junior year. There was like an 8-month time span where I dropped from like 350 something all the way down to about 250 or 245. Probably didn't do it in retrospect, healthiest way. Essentially gave myself an eating disorder for 8 months, but I was in and out of the gym every single day, 2-a-days, get off football, go to the YMCA, in and out, just like that. Lots of Rich Piana YouTube videos.
Oh yeah, I was like, what kind of triggered you to go like, I want to lose weight? Because I mean, imagine like being that heavy, like you're probably one of the stronger dudes on the team,
right? Most of my football coaches didn't really like that I was losing that much weight, especially in like, you're that young, you haven't even really seen any kind of potential that you could be at whatever weight. But like I said, my whole life I was kind of like the fat kid or kind of, overweight. Most of the men in my family always were. So that kind of played like I guess kind of gave me a negative connotation of being that size, especially that young. I mean, I remember 7th grade football weigh-ins, I was 317. Under 6 foot, 317.
Holy shit.
I mean, my knees were always wrecked.
Yeah.
My ankles were always wrecked. Constantly in and out of like different doctors' offices for different conditions and stuff like that. So that really gave me a lot of initiative to like, once I was able to make the decisions on my own of what I was eating, how long I could stay in the gym, finally got my driver's license to drive myself to the gym and stuff that. I kind of, to the strongest end of it, got addicted, probably a little too much. Yeah. And dropped the weight probably a little too quickly. I remember there was one time span, I had 14 days off of school. So it was like, I can dedicate 14 days to lose a pound every single day. I lost 14 pounds in 14 days. Almost died doing it.
You're doing tons of cardio, just not eating? Like, what were you doing to lose the weight?
I think my diet at that time was 1 packet of oatmeal in the morning with water and coffee. Lunch was 1 chicken breast, half cup of rice with vegetables. Dinner was a shake. That was it.
Man, okay. and then training, you were doing like
Football. I was either going to the gym in the morning before school, then football, or football, then the gym after the school.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And if we had like a break time in football, I was there for 4 hours. I thought I had to run 5 miles a day. I was sitting, constantly on the ellipticals and bikes and stuff like that. Just like really, I thought the only way to achieve it, or at least to get that endorphin rush of seeing that scale go down a pound, was do that. And I guess in retrospect, it did work technically, but all that weight came back really, really fast when I went into college and stopped training.
Okay, so tell me about that. What kind of happened? And real quick, just be careful hitting the table.
Right. Sorry, I'm animated.
No, that's totally cool. But I don't, they'll bounce to the cameras. But okay, so talk to me about like going into to college.
Right. So I think probably the biggest fatal mistake I did in between transitioning from high school to college was I convinced myself that I was going to use the rec room at college instead of having a regular gym membership.
Okay.
That was for sure the worst decision.
Now, were you going to a regular gym in high school?
Yeah, I was going to the YMCA.
Okay, so you went to football and then go into the YMCA. Right. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so kind of went back and forth. Our football training facility was only open during school times.
Yeah.
So like once the coaches were gone, it was locked up. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you like, did you stay on campus?
I did right off campus. So essentially walking distance to all my classes. But
okay. But you didn't use the rec center.
Why? Not a chance.
What happened? Just
half of just being kind of either too focused, at least in my first semester, on school to not really care because I was working and going to school and everything like that, or just not caring at all about health or getting stronger, looking better, blah, blah, blah. Also, it's a pretty strange environment at most, or at least in my experience with college, like rec rooms and stuff like that. It's either super, super intimidating or not encouraging at all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to get there, especially when you get your first taste of freedom. You don't want to go to the gym. You want to go out and party and drink and chase tail.
Okay, so when did you get back into it?
I would say probably like 3 weeks before I joined NBS. I was going to an ATC fitness, run of the mill, not really doing anything.
So that was out of college though.
Right.
Okay. So you went through all of college.
It was like 2.5, 3 years probably.
Okay. Of not training.
Right.
How much weight did you put back on?
So I think I graduated right at 220, 230-ish kind of area. I was
high school.
High school. Graduated high school, yeah.
I was like, shit, you lost weight.
Right. Okay. And I was 6'3"-ish, 6'2".
Yeah.
So I was pretty lean looking, not too, nothing crazy. I didn't look obese anymore like I used to.
Yeah.
When I went to college and completely converted back to all of my bad habits and not even having football as a basis to focus myself, I probably ballooned up to about 265.
Okay.
So not
So
super
you never went
crazy.
back to the 350.
I did strength training.
Right. I mean, not during college.
Right.
Okay.
But it was 260, not an ounce of muscle on my body, just skinny fat. Couldn't do a pull up.
What positions did you play going from 350 down to 220?
So with my school being kind of on the smaller end,
Yeah.
It's not like I got bumped from like first team to second team or whatever. I just went from tackle to center.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, figured like, I mean, probably didn't appreciate safety, but
Yeah.
that's funny because like that's it's a lot similar but opposite to like what kind of happened to me. It was like I grew up my whole life just like being a beanpole.
Really?
And told I was too skinny to play football. And then in 7th grade, like kind of like became addicted, was doing the same thing, going to football, weight training after football, closing the weight room, go into a commercial gym, train some more, and like I put on 100 pounds between sophomore year of high school and like sophomore year of college.
Right
I put on 100 pounds.
But at least you gave yourself a couple of years there. I
didn't do it in a year. No.
Yeah.
That would have been very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So,
whenever you were doing that, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
What were your coaches telling you? Were they encouraging you to do it?
I think I had a lot of kind of the same experiences that most high school kids have. Is that my coaches appreciated like my work ethic, but they didn't. They were just, they're they coach science and they teach science. They coach football. Like weight training, nutrition, health was not like what they studied or knew about. So I was getting most of my information from Flex Magazine, Ronnie Coleman videos, and so they were encouraging me in the sense that they liked the fact that I was like working out so much. You know what I mean? And then they moved me from safety. I played safety and wide receiver. Then they're like, okay, well, you put on like whatever it was, 25 pounds, 30 pounds this year. We're going to move you now to like defensive outside linebacker and tight end. And they're like, okay, you put on another 30 pounds. Now you can play tackle and defensive end. So it just kind of moving me closer to the ball. Yeah. They encouraged me, but they didn't like, I didn't have guidance, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think part of it's like, in my mind, I was like, well, I was into more bodybuilding at the time, and I didn't really appreciate the idea of like training for sports. So like, I kind of was like, I'm not going to do this weight training. I need to be going into body part training. Well, now I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, if I could go back and actually make myself squat, bench, and deadlift in high school, I probably would have been a lot better. Yep. Dang it. So yeah, that was kind of.
That was kind of my experience too. Half of the coaches either were mad at me that I was losing weight, or the other half of the coaches were asking me for diet advice because they were also all overweight.
Yeah, what you doing?
Which is even crazier to think, is I had adults that were put in charge of me, knowing how little I was eating and how hard I was working out, and did nothing to stop it.
Right. Like not going, hey, but like no one was there to go. Well, and I think that's just a reflection on like the state of the nation, and then but like the probably imbalance that exists in like high school, and that's not shitting on high school coaches. It's just saying that that's the reality. Yeah. It's like no one took you aside and said like, Noah, man, you're a workaholic. I love it, but what you're doing is not healthy, bud.
Right.
Let me help you. Let's do this the right way. No one sat you down and like was able to do that.
Yeah. No, we sat down and I wrote them meal plans,
right.
which also gave them negative effects.
Right. They're like, yeah. Like, hey, I didn't lose like 25 pounds. What are you doing?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. All right, so what triggered you to kind of like get back into the gym?
So, like I was saying, in college, completely lost all want to be in the gym. Yeah. I had, zero motivation to get in there. No self-accountability, none of that. And one day I was just kind of like, I looked myself in the mirror and I was like, this isn't the person you've been your entire life. Yeah. Like, what's going on? Let's examine these habits to see which ones we need to kick out, which were a majority of them at that time. Yeah. Not to go too deep into it, but you could probably imagine in college life kind of style.
Eat bad food, drink too much alcohol.
Right. And then, so I actually met the person I still train with today, Ben. We worked at the range together. Range USA before we shut down, and we became good friends just through that. Yeah. And he started training here probably a year before I did. Okay. And he would always tell me like, "Hey man, you would really like this. Like, come on, let's go." And one day I texted him. I think I can almost remember the exact text. It was, "Hey, on Monday I'm joining this gym. I can't even do 5 pull-ups. I need you to change me." And
that's awesome.
Kind of snowballed from there. I think I went from like 260-ish to about 220 in like the first probably 6 months. I mean, it shed off super fast because it was just, beer weight and pizza weight just kind of fell off. Yeah. And then that's when I kind of started like specifically strength training, just being in this kind of environment and having the encouragement to do that.
So you got back in and then you're like, okay, now I'm in an environment where like there's knowledge, there's encouragement, there's like atmosphere for like being strong. Right. How did you get into strongman from there?
So, kind of just being in this environment and seeing things that I didn't actually think were like possible for humans to actually accomplish. You go to YouTube channels, to different forums, to seeing, Brian Shaw's YouTube channel, that kind of stuff. And it really started piquing my interest because I had always watched The World's Strongest Man. Like when I was a little kid growing up, like whenever CBS or whatever would play Sports Center, Channel 9, blah, 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 at 3 a.m. So I always kind of like knew it, like in the back of my head what it was, but I never thought it was something that normal people would be able to do. Coming here, seeing some of the implements that were available, like, man, I can try this out. Kind of just went from there, started to enjoy it more, started seeing other people kind of invite me to come do what they were doing, which was a big encouragement on my part. So
very cool. Okay. When was your first strongman competition?
So my first strongman competition was probably like a year and 2 months after I joined here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one was it?
It was the Bill Street. It was Strongman on Bill 3 years ago.
Is that our second one or first one?
We're on 6 now.
Are we? Holy shit. Okay.
This year's will be 6.
Okay.
So
Man.
it was probably Strongman on Bill 4.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. All right. So for people who do not know, what is strongman?
So essentially, strongman, and whatever facet that you want to look at it is, you have 2 different types. You have like the circus strongman, which you can kind of get down the rabbit hole of seeing that on YouTube. People tearing phone books, bending nails, all kind of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's more for show. And then you have the competitive side of strongman, which is what you're going to see more of the stuff that I do, like actual competitions, events, different types of federations, World's Strongest Man, all the way up, to that high of a level.
Yeah.
But it's 5 events usually, and this is all up to the different types of competitions you can actually choose from. But usually it's 5 events, starting with some sort of overhead press, ending with some sort of load, and then there's a moving event, a deadlift, and some other crazy concoction of events in the middle.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think where like powerlifting, Olympic lifting is semi easier to explain to people. Powerlifting is always the squat, the bench, the deadlift. Olympic lifting is always the snatch and the clean and jerk. Strongman's like, it's typically this stuff.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it's a little less consistent in the sense that you may have different pressing movements. Like you may have an axle, which is a fat bar for pressing. You may do a log. You may do a circus dumbbell, right? But you're typically going to see these same movement type patterns in each event.
Right.
But where there's not as much consistency in the events, there's a little more entertainment because, well, it's different stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it looks cool. And it's different, right? Like no competition is ever going to be the same. It's always going to be a little bit, slightly different movements, a little different order, different surface, different implements. So there's like a little bit of entertainment value to the spectators, but also to the competitors as well. Just kind of go in and like just gotta be strong. That's kind of that thing. Is like, you can game it, but like at some level, you just have to be strong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's the complexity and how many types of events there can be almost adds a sense of simplicity, because there's no way you're going to be able to master every single strongman movement. It's not going to be possible. There's over 100 different types of stuff to do, and there's 1,000 different ways to do it. So when end of the day, you just need to be specific to your event for the most part, and show up, be as strong, athletic, and conditioned as you possibly could be.
That's awesome. Okay, so if someone wanted to get introduced to strongman, let's kind of talk first, like how they can kind of like find information on it, like find competitions. Let's kind of talk about that first. If I wanted to do strongman, I've never done it before, what do I Google? Where do I go?
Right. I'd probably go to YouTube. Same with anything in this world that you need fixed or want to learn more information about. YouTube's such a great tool these days. There's tons and tons of like specific channels I could probably mention, but if you just YouTube search strongman training ? It'll bring up enough information to keep you entertained for a year.
Right.
And then like more specifically to actually competing, the USS website and the Strongman Corporation website will actually list events. And they're anywhere from California to Tennessee to New York and everywhere in between.
Yeah. So there's 2 main corporations in the United States, United States Strongman and Strongman Corp. Right. They both put on different events throughout the United States and the world, I believe.
Yeah.
So then what's kind of required to do a strongman competition? Because I say, okay, how do I know if I'm strong enough?
Right. So I would definitely encourage, especially with the access to novice classes that we have now, where in the past we're doing what we're doing. This is the weights. If you can't do it, I'm sorry. Now it's kind of set a little bit more scaled to where we do have the novice, open, masters, weight divisions, male and female weight classes, stuff like that. So if you find a competition, you can find it on the USS or Strongman Corporation website. The entry form itself will have the weights listed, so you can kind of get a pretty good idea of what you're going to have to do and compared to what you're doing right now. So if, say, I've never done a competition in my life, I see that this axle clean and press for reps, for as many reps as possible in 60 seconds is 200 pounds. Well, I know I can kind of push press a 225-pound barbell. I could probably be able to do that class.
Right. Yeah. And the novice class is set up for people who are doing their first competition or new to the sport so that they can get in. And I mean, the reality is it is strongman. So it's supposed to be heavy, right? It's supposed to be somewhat heavy. Not supposed to be lightweight, so you can just rep forever. But it's set up so that more people can do it and
kind of get their feet wet.
Yeah, get their feet wet, enjoy it, have fun.
Yeah.
And it's typically done based off of age and weight.
Yeah.
Like weight class, how much you weigh. So if you're 165 pounds, you're not going to be doing the same amount of weight as someone who's 265 or 365, whatever,
exactly.
Right? And then also women can compete as well. Okay. So now let's talk about like introduction to training for strongman. So let's say someone's never exercised ever in their life. And they say, I want to start doing strongman. Okay. You're like, hey, yep, just start doing the implements. You'll be good to go. Like, should you create kind of like a base level of strength? Like, talk about kind of introduction to the training aspect of strongman and kind of go from there.
Right. So I would say if you're coming straight off the street, you've never touched a barbell before in your life, or it's been a bunch of years, kind of like it was for me, going from not training in college, from training in high school, and then getting back into it after college. For sure, the barbell is going to be your best friend. You need to start with the 4 barbell movements. So deadlifts, squat, overhead press, and bench. We need to use those as like a foundation to build into having enough strength to actually use the implements properly.
Yeah.
Most of the implements, unfortunately, are going to have a bit of a strength barrier. Like, there's not going to be a 20-pound log.
Right.
You're not going to be able to find one that's going to weigh that little.
Yeah.
The smallest one we have for the men's division is 85. So if you can't overhead press at least 85, you're not going to be able to do the log.
Right.
But with a barbell, it's a lot easier to more progressively load. You can start with 45 or even 35 pounds with a smaller bar.
Very cool. And then, so let's say someone comes in, they get introduced like a just regular barbell training. They do that for 6 months, a year?
6 months is probably a good basis, I would say. But by all means, if you're interested in between those 6 months, go over there, play with the farmer's walks, play with the axle, play with the yoke. But I definitely wouldn't, come in right off the street and plan to do a competition within 6 months.
Right. So you start doing some barbell work, I'm building some strength and feeling good. What does your typical strongman training plan schedule look like? What's your week look like?
So, and it's changed, pretty regularly since I've become more advanced. But right now I do 4 days a week. I have a deadlift day, a squat day, some sort of pressing day, either it be, incline bench, regular bench, overhead press, or something like that. And then Saturdays is like my event day, and that will always consist of something overhead press, a moving event, a loading event, and potentially a deadlift.
Okay. And so you're typically doing 3 events on Saturday. Okay.
3 to 4 typically.
What days do you train on?
I do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
Okay.
And that's up to, if everything working with the schedule and everything like that.
So, and then what are the order of those days? What I'm trying to kind of figure out is like for you, because obviously Saturday is kind of like a full body day. You're coming back and pressing a second time, deadlifting a second time. So, those days during the week, are you typically doing like a heavier day in the week and then coming in on Saturday and pulling like more reps or something? Or is like kind of the opposite? Are you doing like
So I would say I would adjust what I do during the week on what I plan on doing Saturday.
Gotcha.
So say if on Saturday I have to do a 95% of comp weight, most reps in 60 seconds deadlift.
Yeah.
That Tuesday, which would typically be my deadlift day, I would probably do something maybe not necessarily lighter, but different than as many as I can in a few reps. I would probably do it elevated if the event was from the ground.
Yeah.
Or I would do like a side handle deadlift during the week if it's a barbell on Saturday.
Gotcha. So then it's like Saturday. So the week kind of becomes more like kind of a prep builder day, and then like Saturday's like I'm gonna put it all out.
And during the week, I'm trying to build a little bit more volume, so a lot more reps and sets comparatively to where on Saturday I may work up to just one big set and just go all out in that 60 seconds, or depending on where I am out from the competition as well.
Now we do that year round. Like, are you 3 days in the gym, one and then one event day year round? Like, does it change going into a competition, coming out of a competition?
So you definitely, I think you could do that year round if you wanted to, but if I wanted to work in like a hypertrophy phase, like sometimes after competitions, I like to do where I'm more focused on a lot more higher reps, kind of like a bodybuilding style workout.
Yeah.
I'll do more than 4 days a week, because if you're just bodybuilding 4 days a week, you're probably not going to get enough volume to actually see some muscle growth. So I would probably do more like 5 or 6 then.
But do you keep the strongman day in still, like after the competition?
Usually, but it's more for fun.
Okay.
It's more like conditioning work. So instead of going like max weight, I would do like a ton of cleans on the log, or lots of back and forth with a sled or something like that.
So keeping the movements in, keeping it fun, but that's maybe not like the day it's not your max day where you're kind of pushing yourself to the limit.
Right.
What about going into a competition?
So that's when you're going to start seeing a lot more like specificity in the actual movements themselves. So one thing that I found that I liked really, really doing throughout the week is I'll taking out regular back squat, and I'll put in box squats throughout like the 10 weeks leading to a competition, just to limit my range of motion. It kind of keeps me from getting injured to myself personally, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get tested in a barbell back squat in my competition. So not that it's not useful for getting you stronger, because it is, but within 6 weeks of a competition, you're probably not getting stronger. You need to really, really fine tune the motor movements.
Is that pretty typical schedule for most strongmen, or like what's some variations that you've seen?
I've seen people do it like that. I've seen people completely throw that out the window and not do it like that. And I think that's kind of one of the cool things about strongman, is that everybody's destination is pretty much the same, but there's 100 different ways to get there. It's like a mountain with 1,000 paths, but all of them end at the same place.
Okay, very cool. So talk a little bit about kind of the necessity for training with the crew, because one thing that I have, so when I left college and then left college strength and conditioning, I went to a sports development facility. Then I started personal training out of like a local commercial gym, and I started purchasing a bunch of strongman equipment, and was doing like strongman Saturdays at the commercial gym. But one of the things I quickly learned was like, you can't do strongman Saturdays solo. I mean, you could, but it'd be the worst experience ever, because you spend the whole daggum session loading things up and carrying it back and forth. So talk a little bit about kind of the necessity for a crew.
And hats off to people that do it that way, because I am aware of and friends with a bunch of people that do it that way. And even them, when they can, they will drive however far it is. They'll pay whatever money it is to come train with a crew, either if it's this one or another one.
Right.
Having not only the environment around you to be able to produce the best whatever you can do that day, having somebody there that's better than you and like consistently better than you for different movements and different events and stuff like that is only going to push you to be better. Like I think that's one of the greatest things about NBS is, especially if you're coming right off the street, or even if you've been training at a regular ATC or whatever it is, if you come in here, most times, unless you're coming here at 5 a.m. when there's nobody else here, you're not going to be the strongest in the room. Right. You're not going to have the biggest overhead press. You're not going to have the deadlift. You're not going to have the biggest squat. I know beating dead horse there with that one, but it's like if you're the biggest fish in the pond, you need to find a bigger pond or you're not going to get any bigger.
Yeah. It's nice to, one aspect of the crew, like you said, is being pushed to find kind of your upper limits,
right,
versus always being able to kind of settle for your like
right,
mediocrity or whatnot. And it's also nice to like work with people who have more experience, maybe better than one other thing, or just having an extra set of eyes to kind of like, man, like it looked like you were doing this,
right,
instead of doing this. Someone that can kind of give you some eyeballs and give you some feedback and say, hey man, like try this and I think it'll work out better.
Oh, for sure. And I think that was one of the biggest things that helped me, excuse me, is just coming in and not really having access to the equipment or being able to do these movements. I mean, there's probably 10 people in this facility alone that deserve to be here talking about strongman more than I do. They've been doing it for longer than I've been alive. And they've never once withheld information from me, because the strongman community itself is, if somebody else is getting stronger, they're going to get you stronger in return.
Yeah. One thing I love about the strongman community and the events is like, especially the one we do on Bill Street, is like, everyone's competing against each other, but like it more feels like a bunch of people
right,
who just got together to work out and have like a friendly competition amongst
yeah,
them. More times than not, it is an individual sport, but you do it in a community, which is pretty cool to watch.
No, for sure. I actually brought a friend to my last strongman competition, and he's never been exposed to any strength sport, let alone strongman alone. And he was very, very confused, and he came up to me and he said, Noah, why is your competition cheering for you? And I was like, it's not really me against them as much as me against the event while I'm going.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the event. So we have a strongman event coming up. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, cool. So we have Strongman on Bill, and this is the 6th one. It's going to be on May 8th, I do believe. Yep. If I have to check that, I can. So we're going to have a log clean, one clean, press as many times overhead in 60 seconds as possible, and those are weight adjusted for the different divisions. Then we have, this may not be the right order, but we have keg over bar. So as many reps loaded keg over bar in 60 seconds. We have a yoke to farmers medley. So yoke run 50 feet, sprint back to the farmers, 50 feet, time stops when you cross the line. Fastest time wins. We have a Husafelt for as far as you can go in 60 seconds. So that's 50 feet turns, down and back as fast as you can do it, as far as you can go in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And then we have a car deadlift at the end. As many reps on the car as possible in 60 seconds.
Okay. So how is it possible for anyone to deadlift a car?
So although it is very visually impressing and almost infuriating to a point, because anytime I post a video of me deadlifting a car, I get way more attention than all the other stuff that I work way harder to get better at. It's essentially you pull the car up onto the thing that holds the back tires, and all you're doing is elevating the back end of the portion with the help of leverages. The car is only moving about 3 inches, so it's really, really not, you're not picking up the entirety of the car, of course. Although it's not easy, there's definitely harder stuff.
Yeah. Well, how heavy do you think, the heaviest car deadlift that we're doing for reps is? So
it's a really hard thing to actually put into a pound perspective, because if you have the car 1 inch forward on the rack, it maybe feel like an extra 100 pounds, but if it's rolled to the end of the rack, it may feel like a 300-pound deadlift. Or if there's weight on the back, wherever the weight is distributed on the actual car itself is going to play a role. If the shocks are springy and it hits the ground and the car bounces up and you catch it in the middle of that bounce, it's going to go up a lot faster and a lot quicker than it is just from the starting of the ground. I would say I've never done a car deadlift that was harder than pulling 650 pounds on a barbell.
Yeah, okay. What's one of the most impressive strongman feats you've seen?
Ones that I've seen in person?
Just go seen in person and then just seen period.
Okay. I would say seen in person 2 competitions ago, the people that were in my division, super heavyweight division. I was 370 pounds at the time, and most of my competitors were about that or even more. And the guy who took second place was only about 245 pounds and about 3 inches shorter than I am, so right at the 6 inch mark or 6 foot mark, excuse me. And he smoked most of the people out there. He pulled 3 more on the car deadlift than I did. He did everything faster. He didn't fail a single event. And it was funny because when we were in line to weigh in, I was right behind him. And he goes, "Man, I think I'm the lightest one in our division." And I said, "Well, that's good for me." He smoked me. The entire competition, I was doing my absolute best just to keep up with him. And I thought that was really impressive. So shout out to that guy. I don't remember his name, but he did great.
It just goes to show, like, it's not always about weight. Like you can performance is based off of, strength and a technique and confidence, and all those things can combine. Obviously, weight plays a role, but it's not always that the biggest guy wins. It's that the strongest guy wins.
Exactly. And that specific competition was very medley heavy, or very lots of reps for the event and stuff like that. So me being very, very unwise in my early portion of the career, and still to this day, really, I was just trying to get as big, as strong, as fast as possible.
Right.
I wasn't worried about how conditioned I was. I wasn't worried about how fast I was running in between the events.
Right.
And that's what won him that one.
Yeah. Well, okay, what was the other one you said? You said you had 2? Did you say you had 2?
That was the only one that I would say, like, in person.
Okay, that was
probably
okay. What about, like, just like famous strongman things that you've heard of or seen?
Goodness, that's great. There's so many. I think that's one of the coolest parts about strongman is, like, most of the events themselves are, like, surrounded in mythology and, like, these grand stories of these people doing the craziest things you've ever heard of, like the Husfell, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but the Husfell stone itself is usually a replica of a stone in Husfell, Iceland, which I think it's like right at 430 something pounds. Jeez. And you have to pick it up and carry it the entirety of the diameter of a sheep's pen to put it back as the door to the sheep's pen. And you weren't, I guess as legend goes, you weren't considered a man if you couldn't do it in the village or something to that extent.
There's always great stories behind, like, all these, like, strongman legends and lore.
And I think there's a really, really good documentary that Rogue put on about, like, the different lifting stones throughout history and, like, their historical relevance, and, like, where they are out throughout the day, like. Today, I think there's a lot in Scotland and Iceland and that neck of the woods.
It was on Netflix?
I think it's on YouTube, actually.
YouTube, okay. I saw that one. So I went to the probably the 2009 or 10 Arnold.
Okay, cool.
And so, funny story. So we were, at the time they were doing the strongman events, like, up on the stage in the expo. And we were, man, like, let's try to get there early so we get some good seats. And so we got there, like, really early, so much that we just kind of, like, walked through the line and actually got to sit, like, at the front row, like, with a press. Nice. It was like press credentials or whatever, and we're just like, we'll just sit here. And so we got to, like, watch it literally from the front row. But I remember in the back, I can't remember who it was, but someone was doing a warm-up with 315 on the bar, and it was like 3 deadlifts, 3 bent rows, 3 hang cleans, and then, like, I want to say he did 3, like, push presses too. I was like, holy shit, like, with 315.
Yeah.
As his, like, warm up preparation for whatever the thing was.
And at that level that those guys are at, that sounds extremely doable for them.
Yeah, but, like, it was like his warm up.
Very casual,
I was like, oh my gosh, that was pretty impressive. And then we watched Derek Poundstone do, I think, 26 reps with the Circus Dumbbell press.
Oh, as that wasn't a part of the competition, but it was like an expedition.
No, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was part of the competition. It was like a 220 Circus Dumbbell press for reps.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay, he did it for like 26 reps, then, like, ripped his shirt off, and then at the night competition for the bodybuilding show, they had the frame carry, like, uphill frame carry, up the ramp, which is like 1,100 pounds.
Right.
And then he proposed to his proposed to his girlfriend at the time.
Right.
And yeah, I'm just like, good Lord. Phil Pfister shook my buddy's hand and like touched his fingers on the other side of his hand. He fully engulfed his hand. Like, oh my gosh.
That's like Mark Felix. Anytime that they do one of the Giant Lives shows, they have like a pamphlet that goes out, and it has a life-size representation of Mark Felix's hands, and it covers up the entirety of the page plus some. It's ridiculous.
Some of the size of these guys is just unbelievable. Like 6'8", 6'9", 440, 450, and like athletic. It's just like, it's other level.
Right.
Humanoid. You're like, how do you exist?
Exactly. And I think that does great to get strongman out into the public.
Yeah.
But I think the unfortunate part is that those are the only guys that get out into the public.
Right.
So any normal Joe Schmo walking around thinks you have to be the Mountain from Game of Thrones to even compete at any level, let alone even try it.
You're like, yeah, well, I'm 5'10", 165. Probably not gonna go against that dude. But that's kind of the thing is like, yeah, but this at the local level, like there's a class for you.
Exactly.
And there's weights that you can lift, you know.
Right. And well, even at the World's Strongest Man level, they have different weight classes. They don't get near the notoriety as I think they should.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the big heavyweight guys are the ones that are always on the, you know, the posters and the videos and the TV and stuff like that. But there are some crazy, incredibly strong people that are in lower weight classes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would even say that the strength to body weight ratio of those guys is I'm not going to say more impressive, but pretty crazy impressive. It's one thing to be like, man, like, yeah, I would expect a guy who weighs almost 500 pounds to deadlift 1,100 pounds.
Yeah.
Because it's just a little bit over double his body weight.
Right.
But then when you're like, oh, but there are dudes who are like 200 pounds that are deadlifting 7 and 8. You're like, that's like, what? And that's crazy.
I would say the margin for the differences between the super big guys and the, you know, lighter weight guys, more leaner guys are like slowly coming together between like how much they can actually produce. I think if you look at, you know, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago at the highest level of strongman, everybody was at least trying to achieve being that big.
Yeah.
But now these days you're seeing most of the guys that are winning, you know, first, second, and third, they're only like 315, 330. Even you have, you know, Rob Kearney who competes right around like 280. And not super tall guy, but he's still keeping up there in most of the events with all the other big guys.
Well, and I think there's probably like a degree of longevity that's more easily achieved by being that weight. Recovery is probably better. You're not putting like the stress placed upon your body trying to keep it at that weight is just incredibly difficult.
Right. And I for one can't talk about like especially somebody at that high level. I'm sure it's completely different than my experience, but as heavy as I've been close to 370 like 2 years ago or so, and I was already contemplating getting the CPAP, and you know I couldn't sleep. I was waking up choking on my own self. Like it's not an enjoyable existence. I would imagine it'd be a little bit more enjoyable if I was as strong as some of those guys.
Right.
But I feel at like the 315 to 320 rate, at least for me, is like perfect primo.
It's like one thing I talk about, like the necessity of aerobic training for like strength sports, and I'm specifically talking about like powerlifting, was the idea that like you always recover aerobically. I mean, like whatever you spike your heart rate up to, you're always recovering into a lower heart rate zone. So your ability to recover, to regulate your heart rate, and just your general stress is going to be based somewhat on your aerobic capacity.
Right.
And so if we have two people training, and if you and I are training, and I have a poor aerobic capacity, and you have a good aerobic capacity, in that training session, I will need more time to recover between sets, which means in that time frame, I will not be able to do as much work as you're going to be able to do because I can't recover fast enough. And then after that fact, you're going to recover, you're going to recover better. Or we try to go at the same pace and you're getting full recovery and I'm not.
Right.
Not that like if you're trying to be a strength athlete, you should be, doing significant amounts of running, like marathons or anything. But it just shows like the necessity for aerobic capacity in strength sports. And so going down that line, like if you're trying to always push your body to the maximum weight, that's going to have somewhat of a negative impact on your aerobic capacity. It's going to take a lot more effort for you to run between events,
Definitely.
to move from here to here, or to keep your heart rate in an appropriate zone, like while doing reps or whatever. So it makes sense that like guys are trying to go back the other way. I can't think of his name. The guy who won the most World Strongest Man's.
Oh goodness, I'm gonna mispronounce his name probably. Are you talking about Pujanowski?
Pujanowski. Right. Yeah, he was on like 290, 300. Mm-hmm. So,
but solid. He looked like an off-season bodybuilder year-round.
Very solid, but crazy. A ginormous human, but
he fights MMA now,
right? And it just kind of goes back to show like his athleticism, his overall athleticism. He was able to maintain a pretty low body fat.
Right.
He probably could have weighed 350.
Oh, easily.
But he was lean the entire time he competed. So,
and I think if you can go back and watch those old competitions where he was competing, you can see the two roads that diverged between him and his competitors, and why he was so dominating them completely is because they were needing oxygen on the side of the vents after every single event. But he was, he seemed like he was handling it a lot better.
Has Strongman kept their events more? Have they kept them kind of like generally the same, or have they, like, as guys have been pushing their weights, because like have they started getting into more heavier weights, or like have they started going back the other way into more like repetition? Because I mean, I know like we've all seen like the mammoth bar deadlift and all that kind of stuff, but like how's that kind of changed at the pro level?
So at least from what I've been able to observe, it seems like in some events where they could put a precedent for like grip strength today, they would make, like you said, the frame was like 1,100 something pounds.
Yeah.
Back then they could use straps on it. And it was causing a lot more injuries to a lot more of the guys. Now it's limited to, I think, like 750 or 8. But they can't use straps.
Gotcha.
So the grip strength is having to play a lot more part in that. So in some aspects, it's maybe less weight, but it's way more impressive because they're holding that in their own hands. They're not, strapped into it. And I think that back in the day, especially in like the early 90s, late 90s, there were some really crazy events like longest held wrist wrapped farmer's hold or something like that, or like a car deadlift where they were picking up the car deadlift, but they had straps and they just had to sit there and hold it for 3 minutes or something crazy like that, which we're really not testing anybody's strength at that point. Right. Testing people's ligaments.
Just testing your body's ability to not like collapse.
And so, and to a degree like that, it's kind of changed and it's kind of progressing, but I think even in the last 5 to 10 years, the competitors themselves have just been getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And there's been more advancements in what actual implements are available to people.
Yeah.
So they're being able to more frequently train the stuff.
Yeah.
But then again, I think 2 years ago, they introduced the the wheel of pain.
Yeah.
Which is like 30,000 pound Conan wheel from the old school movies that nobody's going to have access to do to that. So you're not going to be able to train for that. So that kind of throws them for a loop.
That's kind of like, and I think that's kind of like one of the benefits of like Rogue kind of becoming what they've become is now they are mass manufacturing strongman equipment, so you can get the implements and train them. The flip side of that is they're also they're manufacturing like crazy shit that no one's ever seen before. Then you're not gonna be able to get access to. So because back in the day, it was just they had just the Hummer tire deadlifts, and now they've got it's called the Mammoth bar.
Yeah, the elephant bar, I think, is the one that they use.
Bar,
there is a mammoth bar that's more of like a local scene thing.
Yeah.
But they're essentially the same thing. They're super, super long, whippy bars, and you can really, really crank the weight up on them just because it's not leaving the ground as soon.
Yeah.
I think as far as it's progressing in strongman at the top end level, less and less events are going to be like that because the guys are getting so strong. It's impressive enough for them just to use the regular deadlift bar and then, break records on that and stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool.
But shout out to Rogue for real for giving everybody access to the equipment at not a super, super crazy high expense either. And I know a lot of people in powerlifting and strongman or whatever you do and compete in talk a lot of smack about CrossFit, but if we didn't have CrossFit and all the money that it generated for Rogue, we wouldn't be having all this really cool equipment for strongman.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, I think that I was gonna say CrossFit's like the like entry level drug, or what's the terminology, whatever. But it's like the
gateway drug.
It's a gateway drug to all the other strength sports,
right?
You know, because it has implements of powerlifting, implements of Olympic lifting, implements of strongman in it, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that looks fun, like,
yeah.
And it is in and of itself is an encouraging encourages exploration with regards to fitness, whereas like Olympic lifting doesn't really like encourage exploration. It's just you commit to Olympic lifting. Right. Same thing with like powerlifting. Strongman to a degree, I think, is more open to it because you're going to have an element of some of these other things because of the nature of strongman being more diverse. Mm-hmm. It has a little more openness. But like one thing CrossFit does is it encourages you to like go explore and try different things. So, and that's exposed a lot of people to strongman. And hopefully we'll see, as like I said, more people who are in these weight classes that are what most normal people weigh versus 400 pounds, right? It'll encourage more people to come out and like try their first competition. Right. And I would say, like, based off our weights, even most of our CrossFitters, if they've been training for a little bit, like, give them a couple months to kind of prepare and do some of the implements, like they could show up and do the novice class for sure, all day long. Sure. You know, it's like what's the novice class log clean and press?
I think it's 225, maybe 200. I'd have to double check.
Okay, for guys, yeah. So it's like 200-pound push press,
right?
Over
and
the log.
It's 90 for the women's division.
Yeah, over the log. So very cool. All right, Noah, appreciate you coming on the NBS Fitness Podcast. Hopefully this will help some people understand a little bit more about strongman, get exposed to it, and hopefully go explore it on their own.
Definitely, for sure.
All right, bud. NBS Fitness Radio out.
Thank you for listening to NBS Fitness Radio. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, follow us on social media, and check out our website at www.nbsfitness.net. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more NBS Fitness Radio.